This is Making Stitches, and this time we hear from novelist Elaine Everest, who says that the crafts which have featured in her stories over the years have been hugely important to her over the past 18 months.
All my writing social events came to a stop, but I still had to keep working, I still had to keep writing. But that is when I suddenly got interested. I think thanks to the Patchwork Girls as well, that craft came to me. And I think it's only recently that I've felt that it kind of has saved me a little bit. It's given me that other interest apart from being locked indoors writing.
Hello and welcome to Making Stitches. I'm Lindsay and it's lovely to have your company today. There was a really lovely response to my last episode about my trip to this year's Yarndale Festival in Skipton. Thank you to everyone who listened, and especially to those who messaged me or commented about it. It was so nice to hear from you. Now, normally I speak to craftspeople specifically about their crafts and their creative journeys. This time, though, I'm doing something slightly different. In the summer, I was approached by a publisher who thought one of their new books might fit with the podcast. It's a story of friendship during World War II. There's a crime central to the story and a bit of romance as well, which on the face of it isn't really the kind of thing I'd share on the podcast. However, the book, The Patchwork Girls, features a group of women who form a sewing circle making patchwork quilts, rag rugs and knitted items to help with the war effort, and draw on the real-life experiences of crafting by the author, Elaine Everest. Elaine's had a really interesting life. She grew up in a household where sewing, knitting and the make, do and mend ethos permeated her childhood. She made money herself from dressmaking for friends and family, set up a business making raincoats for dogs, and created designer garments on knitting machines for boutiques in London before setting off on her career as a novelist. Elaine has even made a patchwork quilt herself, but sadly lost it in a house fire. Sewing has featured in Elaine's previous books, but it takes centre stage in her latest novel, The Patchwork Girls, and has helped rekindle her love of crafting, especially during lockdown. I spoke to Elaine last month as she was preparing for her book launch.
Sewing's always been a big part of my life, along with writing. And as my publishing career took off more, my sewing slid away a little bit. But writing The Patchwork Girls, my latest saga, and my characters sew during the war, and of course they make quilts, and I thought, I need to start sewing again. So it's come back into my life, but don't tell my editor because they'll be asking me to write more words rather than sew.
So when did you first start sewing? Is it something that's been in your life from childhood?
Yes, very much so. My mother sewed the little Singer hand sewing machine, which we used. She made her own wedding dress. It survived the floods of 1953, a month before she got married. So we grew up with this story of how the dress, the sewing machine and all the fabric was rescued by boat. And yeah, I'm of the age where at school, we taught to sew. We had to make our apron for cookery, and then it was a blouse with buttonholes and a flared skirt. And gradually, and I mean, we're talking about the late 60s, early 70s here, I got to make my own mini dresses and things like that. So, and at that time, sewing was wonderful because you could get cheap fabric in the markets and plenty of patterns, and it was cheaper to make the fashions than it is these days, quite honestly, because although fabric is lovely, it's quite expensive as well. So, but yeah, that's how I started. I made my own bridesmaid dresses as well, early 70s, and I continued sewing. I'm heavily involved in the dog world, showing and things like that. So when I was at home with my dogs, because you can't go to work and leave them really, I did a lot of sewing to the point I used to make made-to-measure raincoats for dogs.
Wonderful.
So if you see one of these dogs go into Crufts, with the multicolour raincoats or boots, they would have been mine or some similar to mine. So it was a lovely occupation, and I run skirts up for people, and my stepmother used to take them into work and sell them. So it's been a useful income as well as a lovely interest. But as I say, as my writing took off more, it fell away a little bit. I made a patchwork quilt as well, so at one time, but that died in a house fire that we had. So, yeah, it's always been a big part of my life, sewing, really. And I enjoy it.
You're obviously an incredibly creative person, Elaine, to have had, started off with the sewing and then transferring that creativity into writing. What was it that kind of tipped the balance from using your hands to sew to typing out stories?
When, crikey, we're looking at the 1990s, and in a way it was the dogs. Because I belong to breed clubs, and you get pulled in to do all sorts of voluntary things, and I ended up editing one of the Old English Sheepdog Club magazines. And the way it goes, you have to chase people for content. Deadlines approach, the content doesn't arrive. Will you write it yourself? So I started writing all these bits and pieces, and I thought I could be brave. I could pitch article ideas to pet publications. And I did. I mean, I was frightened to death the first time I was commissioned, and I had to suddenly create something that people were going to read. But I thought, I quite like doing this. So along with making my raincoats, I was writing articles for pet publications. I ventured into newspapers with women's opinion pieces. The best one I thought I ever wrote was why my husband should live next door to me rather than in the house. And I ended up discussing it on Woman's Hour with Jenny Murray.
Oh, wow.
Mine was rather tongue-in-cheek, but I think they took it a little bit more seriously. My husband laughed. He went, well, that's good. You've earned some money. Well done, girl, But, yeah, so it overlapped, and I'd started writing fiction at that time, and it was short stories for the women's magazines. As you know, the women's magazines have lots of craft and knitting patterns, and so the whole thing, it was kind of organic, my interest in writing and sewing merged together. But gradually, as I thought, I'll have a go at a novel like you do. And to begin with, I'd done some pretty awful rom-coms and things like that, but I loved reading sagas. I, again, of the age where I'd heard parents and grandparents talk about the war and the town where I lived. So my first big book, I wrote some smaller ones, but my big one where I had the agent and Pam Macmillan, the publisher, was the Woolworths Girls, which was supposed to be a standalone book about girls in the war, friendship, make do and mend. So the sewing still crept in there. But the readers were a joy, and they loved it so much that my publisher said, stop what you're writing. We need more Woolies books. So I'm still writing those. So I do the occasional other ones, the Tea Shop Girls set with the nippies on the coast. I wrote one about the girls working at Butlins just after the war. And I'm always thinking of different things to write. And I came up with the Patchwork Girls, which is set in Biggin Hill in World War II. But it's not about the air base. It's not about, I've got friends that write lovely books about service people and women that served. But I like to write about home front and how the women coped, left alone while the men go off to war and what they do. And the Patchwork Girls evolved from that. And of course, the whole thing, the quilt that my main character Helen is working on, is a double wedding band quilt. I had to pick one of the most difficult ones. And they've, I was going to hold it up, but of course you can't see it. The cover has the most beautiful quilt on it, which helped that my editor at the time, Caroline, also loves sewing and handicrafts. So she was able to guide the illustrators to the correct quilt. And the girls also have such beautiful hand-knitted cardigans. I'm starting to think, perhaps I could start knitting again. so it's got a lot to answer for, this book. So it's... I just love the cover, and the readers that have seen it so far have just sort of fallen in love with it. It's really evocative of the time and when women would sit and sew together. And yeah, I just really enjoyed writing it. You know, there's a good crime in there as well because I love a bit of crime. But and there's a real person in the book as well, called Rita Binks, and
Yes.
Rita's daughter-in-law won a competition to be a character in my book, and she nominated her mother-in-law Rita, and I thought, what a lovely name, Rita Binks. So Rita almost saves the day in the book. You know, it's very girl's own adventure at times, but she's been a joy, and I've really got to know Rita and her family, and Rita got an early copy of the book to read as well. So yeah, it's just been a lovely project to work on. So I hope there'll be a few more.
Yeah, wonderful. So, where did you get your inspiration from then? I know you said that obviously you've had an interest in World War Two, but actually the crafts, and you've clearly got a deep knowledge about patchwork and quilt making, and in it meant so Helen, the main character, joins a sewing circle when she moves back home to
Yes,
Biggin Hill, doesn't she? But it's not just
yes.
a sewing circle. There's patchwork, there's rag rugs, there's knitting, there's all sorts of different things
Oh,
going on at
yes,
the same
yes.
time. They seem, you know, quite a fastidious, lot all beavering away trying to work towards the war effort.
Yes, yes. We had a vicar's wife at the beginning because the group should have met in the church hall until I think it was a fire, something happened. So a lady whose husband's in the Canadian Air Force lives in a big house. Saves the day, Liz, and she's just a lovely character. She's what I like to think of as one of my three girls. Um, in the story, in that she's the mother figure almost. And she's come over from Canada and she gave a talk on patchwork quilts because she made them. She collected them from her family. And all of a sudden, Helen, who really just gone along to this group to escape her overbearing mother, who was trying to control her life since she'd moved home, found herself almost sucked into this group, and of course she adored it, and she adored making all these new friends, and the love interest as well was there. So it's I love to have characters that take control of the other women to help them and guide them through, and we all know women like this in our lives that encourage us. But so, of course, it wasn't just enough that in Lizzie's house she had the patchwork and the quilters. She remembered that, oh, well, I've got the rooms. I'll have the knitting ladies can sit there. And I think we had some crochet and, oh, there was all sorts really. And of course, everybody baked and cooked and did the best and had a great time, even though there was a war on.
Now, writing about all these crafts, has that
Mm.
inspired you to revisit the crafts of old that you've loved in the past?
Yes, yes. I have a crochet project at the moment. My husband's gifted me, actually, it was Christmas before last and I've not finished it, but one of these quilts kits, with all the different colours to there and stuff. So I get it out occasionally and stroke it. And I've done a few few rows, and I think we were going to take it on holiday. We go to Cornwall for the dog's holiday quite often, and I'll take it. I can sit. I won't be writing. I'll crochet. But of course, it travelled to and fro with me, and it sits there saying, "Finish me" all the time. So I will. I promise that I will, because I've confessed on social media that I have this project to do. Um, but yeah, it suddenly got me interested in quilts again. I had to go back. It's been a few years since my one poor quilt was made, which was a bit hit and miss with all the fabrics and and we were talking quite a few years ago here, so there wasn't the YouTube workshops and the lovely magazines that are out now, and of course podcasts and things. And so I started to delve. To begin with, it was research for the book, but then I found YouTube. So now I've signed up to all these different people that many of them are in America, but they produce such wonderful podcasts. And I think I'll make that one. Then, of course, another one comes up, and I think I'll copy that one. Or there'll be a film of how to piece something together. And, there's so much help out there now. But I've promised myself that I'm going to start my own quilt project after 14th of October when the book comes out. And I have that couple of weeks where I can take a deep breath before carrying on, because obviously I'm already writing the book after next. But life's back to normal and I'm just writing. So, and I'm going to, but I'm going to buy kits just so that it's pre-cut, because otherwise there'll be blood everywhere. I'm terrible with these cutting wheels and things. My fingers are attracted to them. So
They're terribly sharp, aren't they?
But I love jelly rolls. I mean, I'm always buying jelly rolls of fabric, and I've got my fabric stash already. So I'm into all of that, and I follow the Great Sewing Bee on Facebook. So I'm in it, although I'm not actually producing anything apart from bookmarks for my readers at the moment.
Yes, how lovely. You gave me a sneaky peek before we started recording the interview. They're amazing. So special readers will be getting these special handmade bookmarks.
And the books that are going out very shortly to reviewers and the book blogger people, I do a blog tour and things, there'll be one with that, and there's a ribbon printed with the name of the book and my website as well. So I'm kind of hoping they hang on to them. I usually have the cardboard type of bookmarks that go out, and when I give talks at libraries and women's groups, I hand them out because I've not been anywhere. So I think for the last 2 books, I've not even had a bookmark printed. It's quite sad, really. I'm not sure I'll ever go out again, actually. I'm quite used to doing Zoom talks where the bottom half of me is still in pyjamas. But I've enjoyed making them. Although my husband's sort of saying, "Have you got the time to do all this?" Yes, fine. I've purchased an overlocker as well. It was a bit scary when it was delivered, but everyone was speaking about them, so I got myself a little brother overlocker. I love it. Once I get the hang of threading the wretched thing, I have the laptop set up next to it with a tutorial. And, as long as the threads don't break, I'm whizzing away and I'm fine with it. But it's just lovely. It reminds me of my days when I was knitting with a knitting machine as well. So when I used to knit for a lady that supplied London stores with fabulous designer outfits, and I think it was Jan Leeming wore one of them on TV once to read the news.
Oh my word!
Maybe one that I made, as long as the stitches hadn't dropped or anything. But yeah, that was another way that I earned my living. I always think that, even if we have a job, if we want to earn a few extra pennies, sewing and knitting can help us. It's a great way to work at home, doing something that you enjoy doing. So I had dogs. I know friends that had babies, couldn't go out to work, and they would knit or sew. It was great fun.
Well, it's something that women especially have been doing for generations, isn't it? It's crafts within the home which are marketable.
Yes.
And can bring in some extra money, definitely.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, you mentioned that you've been very creative during lockdown. Lots of people that I've spoken to have either found lockdown has kind of impinged on their creativity and they've kind of hit a mental barrier, whilst other people have just flourished with the lack of distractions and this extra time on their hands. I believe you have written 3 novels during lockdown. Is that right?
Yes, because I'm contracted to write and supply my books. I think just as lockdown, you lose track of time as well, don't you? March last year, I had a book coming out, and I swear, just as my book was supposed to hit the supermarkets, it was lockdown, and they roped off the non-essential aisles. I mean, I thought books are essential as far as I'm concerned, but I still had to keep writing. And chatting to my other saga writing friends, because we have our own little closed groups where we knit and talk and moan about everything. And we were all hit with the same thing. We had to keep working because we've always worked from home. So as far as we're concerned, life is the same. We might suddenly have our shopping delivered, but life for us was the same. We carried on working. It was how the outside world affected our work. And we had to find ways of getting our books to readers. So even at one time, Amazon weren't stocking all the paperbacks because there was this non-essential thing going on, where selling books and posting them wasn't deemed the right thing to do. So we were finding other ways of trying to attract people to read our books. Kindles are good, e-readers are very good for that. But a lot of my readers prefer paperbacks. So you have to swerve people that way. But I was contracted. I kept writing. I've lost track of the books, and I think I have that last year, March and October, I had a book out. Obviously, this March just gone, I've had A Mother Forever came out. Now I have the Patchwork Girls. And I'm keep going. At the moment, edits are in as well for the Woolworths Saturday Girls, which comes out next February, March. I'm writing the one for the end of next year. So pandemics or not, whether I'm trapped indoors, I'm always trapped indoors because I'm writing. So for me, it's really strange. Obviously, you can't go out and meet people. All my writing social events came to a stop, but I still had to keep working. I still had to keep writing. But that is when I suddenly got interested. I think thanks to the Patchwork Girls as well, that craft came to me. And I think it's only recently that I've felt that it kind of has saved me a little bit. It's given me that other interest apart from being locked indoors writing. So, but thank goodness for social media as well, where we can reach out and chat to people and, read about our interests and listen to people. And Zoom, I fought against it to begin with. Oh, you weren't going to catch me on Zoom, but I've even got used to that.
It's
so
amazing how
adaptable. Never leave home again.
Absolutely, it's amazing how adaptable we all are.
We are, yes. If women could cope in the war, we can cope in lockdown.
We can indeed. So obviously, crafts, sewing, patchwork, as we've said, is an incredibly strong theme throughout your book, The Patchwork Girls.
Yes.
Are crafts going to be featuring more in your future writings?
Yes, in fact, they do in the Woolworths Girls series, because Maisie, one of my main three girls, well, she's an older lady now, but she was a great home sewer. She could turn anything into a siren suit or, kiddies' clothes as the kiddies came along and make something out of nothing. And gradually, as the series progressed, she had her own little shop, Maisie's Modes, where, because obviously there was still rationing for new fabric and things like that, a lot of her items were either second hand or refurbished. As we move into my book that comes out February, March, the Woolworths Saturday Girls, Maisie's not only getting her second shop, but she's setting up her own little factory where she's creating, and she's thinking of going into wedding gowns and other things. She's a great person for thinking outside the box, how to grow her business. But she's just, well, she'd tell you this as well, she's as common as muck. She drops her H's all over the place, and she's just someone that's earning a living, doing something she likes to do. So I quite like Maisie. I could forget Woolworths and go off with Maisie and her sewing machine at times. So, but of course, we're moving on to the younger generation, which is Maisie's daughters or stepdaughters feature in the book now, because we're moving into the 50s. So it's interesting what they will do. And some of those have picked up on the sewing and some hate it with a vengeance. Typical teenagers. But yeah, it will always be, because I think the time period that I worked in, I'm writing about, women did sew. It was unusual to find a woman that didn't sew or knit. I grew up with this around me. So, if my mum wasn't knitting, unpicking old jumpers, steaming them and re-rolling the wool, ready to make something else that would fit us. Knitting extra cuffs on jumpers so they lasted a bit longer. And there was, I thought it was the norm, because I grew up with it. It was all around me. And if my mum wasn't making something for us, she was helping other people. So, she was a great role model for handicrafts.
That's wonderful. Now, if anybody's listening to this and they're tempted to have a dabble at writing themselves, because obviously a lot of people who listen to this are creative themselves,
Yes.
What kind of advice would you have for them?
I would say start with a short story. Don't think suddenly I've got to write a book, because that's a lot of words and there's a lot of planning. I would always say read. Writers need to keep reading. Sometimes I hear excuses from new writers that, oh, I'm too busy writing to be able to read. But if you can't enjoy a book, how can you expect to write one? And you need to learn what it's all about. But for me, I started out in short stories for women's magazines. There aren't as many now that feature short fiction, but you've still got My Weekly, Woman's Weekly, The People's Friend, Yours magazine. And they're a good read apart from having short stories, and get to know what they like. You can go online now, it's so easy. Find out the submission details. Have a go and send it off. You may be rejected. I was rejected umpteen times, but gradually you get the hang of what you're doing. And it's just lovely to be able to create a short story. It's satisfying, it's relaxing, and who knows, you might earn a few bob at the end of it. So, it's nice. In fact, just before I came online to speak to you, I had the proofs for a short story that is going out on the 2nd of October's My Weekly. And it's a short story in a way to promote the Patchwork Girls that's coming out. But one of the characters is in the short story, and I got sent the proofs, and it's so lovely just to see the lovely illustrations that the magazines do. And it's been such a while since I wrote it, so I had to, did I write that? I couldn't remember. So, but I would say to anyone, if so many people say, I'm going to write a book one day, just sit down and do it. But make it something shorter to begin with. It doesn't everything you write doesn't have to be for publication. Just write for the enjoyment of it, even if it's keeping a diary or, just writing letters even. It's just another way of being creative, and enjoy it.
That's wonderful, Elaine. Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and good luck with the Patchwork Girls.
Thank you.
My thanks to Elaine for speaking to me for Making Stitches. The Patchwork Girls is out now after its release last week. It's published by Pan Macmillan and costs £7.99. I've added Elaine's website to the show notes for this episode in case you'd like to find out more about her and her other books. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode and would consider leaving a review on your favourite podcast app, that could really help spread the word about Making Stitches, and I'd be really grateful. You can also support Making Stitches by buying me a coffee or supporting the Making Stitches shop. There are links to these in the show notes as well. Thanks very much for listening. It's been lovely to have your company. I'll be back again in 2 weeks' time with another inspiring maker story for you. Until then, keep safe and enjoy your crafting.